Bring the meeting to order. Town of Pittsburgh Board of Commissioners, Monday, October 14th, 2019. May we have a moment of silence for invocation, please? We could bow.
Certainly. Would everyone rise for the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have our agenda here before us. So we actually need a motion to approve the agenda as indicated or a motion to modify the agenda. Second. All in favor?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, as I indicated to you earlier, the staff would like to suggest that item number 1 under old business be removed from the agenda, and a new item under the consent agenda, I guess, which would be number 9, to establish a new public hearing for the special use permit for the Tilden Communication Tower project for the 28th of October.
I think that would be item 10. We've got 9.
Okay. Depends on which revised agenda we're dealing with.
Okay. SUP 2019-01 should be moved to the consent agenda as item number 10.
Yes, sir. But not to make a decision on the permit, but to have a public hearing on the 28th.
Set a new public hearing.
So, did everyone hear this, what Mr. Vincent has indicated? We need to set a new public hearing for the special use permit for the Tilden Communication Tower located at Mitchell's Chapel Road. Mitchell's Chapel Austin Court Service Road.
And then we'll be for October 20th.
October 28th, 2019.
Make a motion to approve the agenda with that modification.
Second. Been motion and properly second. All in favor?
Aye. All right.
Thank you. Now we have to have a motion in reference to the consent agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda, but I would like to pull one item, and that's number 5. And I guess we would make that old business. Why don't we just slot it in there as old business number 1?
While you're on that, Michael, I would like to possibly just a couple of questions on item number 2, the DOT transportation improvement. I just have one question on that, and we could probably run it through real quick then.
Put it on number on the
Old
business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Consent agenda item 2, the old business number 2.
Yes.
Motion to approve the consent agenda with those modifications.
Second. All in favor?
All right.
Let's go forward with this. Next, we'll have our ceremonial agenda, which is a resolution for peace in the town of Pittsburgh. Resolution for peace by the Pittsburgh Board of Commissioners. Whereas Pittsburgh is a all right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, this is an updated draft. So this is the updated, actually, resolution. So it's Resolution for Peace by the Pittsburgh Board of Commissioners. Whereas Pittsburgh is a unique and peaceful community, Pittsburgh's people and businesses are known across the state as a wonderfully welcoming community. And whereas the peace of our community has recently been disrupted by disagreements over the Confederate statue and the posting of Confederate flags. And whereas the Chatham County Commissioners, not the Pittsburgh Board of Commissioners, have the title to the courthouse circle. And whereas the recent addition of Confederate flags, one inside the town limit and one in the town's extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction, plus violent and disrespectful confrontations in downtown Pittsburgh have divided our community, have brought fear to our children and their parents, and have brought people from out of town and other states to demonstrate and protest. Whereas these activities do not reflect Pittsburgh's welcoming atmosphere, and these activities are hurting the community, businesses in the area of downtown, and have increased the need for law enforcement presence overseeing these demonstrations. And whereas the town of Pittsburgh Board of Commissioners acknowledge that all citizens have the right of free speech, right of assembly, right to petition the government, and the town board is united that these rights should be exercised without fear, without intimidation, and without violence. Now, therefore, the Pittsburgh Board of Commissioners implores the citizens who wish to express their First Amendment rights to do so without extremism, without violence, and without injury to persons, businesses, or property. And further, that the Pittsburgh Town of Commissioners reject acts, symbols, and messages which divide our community, and we urge citizens to work toward open communication, dialogue, and reconciliation, recognizing our shared humanity, equality, and dignity for the benefit of unity and peace in our exemplary town. This is who we are. And that is our resolution for peace by the Pittsburgh Board of Commissioners this 14th day of October 2019. Thank you very much. So,
I move that we pass the resolution.
second. So I call for the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. So, thank you. This is very, very important in reference to the town of Pittsburgh for individuals to know that we do allow. Free speech is certainly wonderful, but there are times, and you have to be careful with what you do and your actions. But we do welcome all people into Pittsburgh, but it has to be within the law. And thank you very much for listening to our resolution and hopefully agreeing to that. Thank you. So we will move on to our regular meeting agenda with citizens matters. We have two public expression speakers. The first is Ron Hatley. If you will come forward, please.
Thank you, Madam Pro Tem. Mayor. It's good to follow something positive for a change, so what I'm going to do is try to do something as well. Mr. Grusbeck is going to do a little presentation for me as I do my little presentation. Madam Mayor Pro Tem and members of the board, staff, and the folks that usually attend this meeting, I would like to invite you to the festival that we have at Halloween. I know it's a very busy time of the year, but these are pumpkins on the bridge. And if you have little ones, or if you have little ones in your community and can't make this, I went ahead and took a few shots, and Mr. Grusbeck agreed to show those as we go along. But this is an example of who we are and what we are in the community of Bynum. It's a town with many people, many artists, musical artists, artists in residence that make things that you may not be able to recognize, to people that paint portraits that almost look like photographs. And during the course of events, can you change those, Mr. Grusbeck?
There's a whole list of them. What do you want out there?
No, just as you go along. As I speak boringly.
Okay.
You want you to click it?
Oh, do I need to click it or you click it?
No, I mean, no. I just have you gave me a file, a thumb drive with a bunch of pictures on it, so I don't know what.
Yeah, if you can just click through those.
Okay.
Some of these things you can't imagine. We have some kids that do them, not quite as artistic. As you'll see on maybe one of these pictures, it's 2 squirrels on a crane building a tree. Some of these things are just incredible, the things that you can see on there. But while I'm blowing my horn for Bynum, we were voted the best place in Chatham County for this month. And in there you will see some of the artists on there. This is what happens when you call a community and you send them an email saying, can you show up at the bridge and we'll take a picture, and this is what happens. One of the other things that we do, we sponsor scholarships during the course of the year. With the money that we raise, we give those grants and scholarships. We call them grants, then the students don't have to disclose to the school that it's monies that they received. But these are usually avid students. They're usually the first person in their family to go to a school after high school. So I just wanted you to see some of the things that appear. And maybe if you can show those, Mr. Grusbeck, as we go through, that would be great. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
Ron, what's the date the pumpkins start?
It's on Halloween. Halloween night. I am the bridge keeper. I stand there and take money. Since we're a non-profit to pay for the pumpkins, the pumpkins are locally sourced. You may enjoy to hear that. We were getting them from Noel at the old Ford motor place that was here. He's now moved, but we get those from him. Then the pumpkins the night after, they're either composted or we give them to a farmer and he provides those to his livestock. So we try to do things as green as possible. But usually the hours are from 6 till 12 on Halloween night. And as I said, it's not advertised because it's a bit of a traffic problem. We have around 2,000 people that show up during the evening. It's quite an event.
It's truly a wonderful event. We've taken our children every year since they've been born, so that's 9 years.
Fantastic.
My kids are grown and I still go every year.
It's fun for grown-up kids too. Thank you, Ron.
This is something that we adopted whenever the chicken bridge no longer was a chicken bridge, and so we took that on. Thank you for your time.
Pass along our thanks and encouragement.
Thank you very much. Next we have Randy Voller.
I apologize, Mayor Baldwin. I like saying Mayor Baldwin, but I apologize I don't have a fancy presentation with pumpkins. But I would love to get a copy of that, Ron, for the publisher Chatham County Line, and I'm sure the other media folks here in town would love to put that out. Those images are gorgeous. Good evening, County Commissioners and Acting Mayor Baldwin. Over the years, you've had to do this a few times, including when I was out of town. My name is Randolph Fuller. I live at 21 Randolph Court in Pittsboro. I'm addressing you this evening as the former mayor of this town from 2005 to 2013. First ran for office years ago on a slate with you, Pam, and Ephraim Ramirez, still here in town kicking. It was a tough race, and Pam and I won along with an incumbent who's actually a neighbor of mine named Chris Walker, and a neighbor of yours, John, just up the street. I ran 3 more times and was blessed to be reelected each time. Last time I ran in 2011, I was on a victorious team with Bette Wilson Foley, who's just kind of winding up your 8 years, Beth Turner, and we were sworn in with Jay Farrell many years ago. It was an honor to lead that board. It was a strong board, and we got a lot accomplished. What I found over the years is that politics in Pittsboro and Chatham County can sometimes seem like a full contact sport. Some may even call it democracy demolition derby, or some might have some other terms for it. But I will say that everyone who puts their name on a ballot to run for public office, whether it's in Pittsboro or Chatham or anywhere in this country, has my respect, especially those who choose to run and serve in local office. Because you are the closest to the people and can make a lot of decisions that are quite impactful in the lives of your residents. And let's just say it's for very little pay. You're not congressional members. You're not going to end up with insurance for life or anything else, but you're going to end up making decisions that affect people's lives probably for 5, 10, 20, 30 years out. You are the closest to the people. That said, I find it a bit disconcerting that we are once again experiencing a town board race where we have political action committees and other voices that appear to be stirring up fear, loathing, anger. Now, as God is my witness, I did not always agree with Commissioner Farrell. He can say that. I mean, we had our moments, Jay.
It sure did.
I think you even came right out and said it, you know. But I find it interesting that anyone would claim you were a rubber stamper, because that wasn't my experience with you. You're your own person.
Thank you.
As for Commissioner Farrell, Commissioner Fiocco, I observed someone who was a hard worker and comes to meetings prepared. In fact, I would say that Mike digs into the materials and redlines them like an editor or a professor. I sat next to you for 4 years, and I looked over there, and it was a sea of red. You were doing your homework. So, from my point of view, I don't think it's right to insinuate that you're unethical or on the take, and I think that's shameful, dirty pool to say it, unless there's proof. I'm a member of the press now. I've got my press badge. If there's proof, show us. Give us the proof. But otherwise, I don't want to read or see anything else that insinuates that members of this board that I know work very hard, John, I know you work very hard, are unethical or on the take, because that was not what I observed in my time. I haven't sat up there in 6 years, but I just don't think it's right. However this race clarifies, and whoever wins are going to have to sit in these seats. Some may be the same, some may be different, but we can't impugn the nature of the board that I took the gavel from Nancy May, who took it from Chuck Davini, and it's been passed on. It can't be impugned that our folks are on the take, because they're not. You don't get paid much to do this job. I think people would actually be amazed to know how little you're paid. And you're asked to do work 40, 50 hours a week sometimes. I know that these meetings sometimes go to 12 midnight now. So I just beseech folks that, let's run this race on the merits of the issues and let the chips fall as they may, and let's not have any more discussions of you being a rubber stamper and you being on the take. You're not even up for election. And let's just let it be what you stand for, what the people stand for, because I wanted to put this on the record. I mean, I know that Jay and I have had a few arguments up there, and I definitely know that you were never a guy I could just come in and say, Jay, do this.
We always could shake our hands at the end of the night.
We could. And in fact, some of the people that I worked with over the years, we did not go to church together. We didn't play softball together. Heck, we weren't even on the same political team. But we did some good things for the town that you all have built on, and I think that's the legacy we should build on. Getting bus service, we started with that, trying to improve the water. This water issue's been an issue, John, for 20 years. And until we get people upstream respecting us, it probably still will be an issue. It's an unfortunate reality.
It's been more like since I was a little kid.
Exactly. But I will say that our folks have come together on some amazing issues and done things. We got a Main Street program going I never thought we'd do, and a lot of other things because we were able to pull together even when we didn't get along. So I just wanted to put that on the record. I appreciate your time, Mayor Baldwin. We look forward to seeing Mayor Perry when she gets back. But I've looked through the record, and I know you've done this 4 or 5 times over the years, including twice for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, former Mayor Bowler.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you, Randy Bowler, also. And because you specifically called me out, I feel compelled to respond and put it on the record myself. at Saturday's candidate forum organized by the Eastern Chatham NAACP, I made statements that warrant clarification. I made it clear that I have no financial interest in public service, which is why I feel I can speak freely with clear sight, with clear vision about the developments here in town, good and bad. I also said everyone brings an agenda to their public service, and I urge voters to think carefully about what candidates say and don't say. I did say those things, verbatim. And afterwards, I was surprised that two people came up to me and asked me if I have evidence of any wrongdoing or financial mischief, and that if I do, I must come forward with it. I now see that connection that others may have drawn. Here's the thing. The word agenda and the possibility of wrongdoing or financial mischief are two entirely different things. To be clear, I don't think that anyone on this board is doing anything legally wrong. I don't believe that anyone on this board is on the take. I spoke with Mayor Pro Tempore Baldwin about this precisely before we came into the meeting tonight. I do not believe that any of my fellow town commissioners have violated any laws or taken money inappropriately or anything of that sort. Quite the contrary. I truly believe that each of my fellow commissioners and the mayor are upstanding, law-abiding leaders, each of whom believes that we are doing the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Bonnets, and let me just echo what you just said. I would like to reiterate, I believe the same thing. As long as I've been on the board, I have no indication, and I clearly think that no one has been taking any type of funds from anyone in reference to that. We do this as an honorable position, and we do this because we love the town of Pittsburgh. It's not about the money, but it's about trying to represent the citizens and make sure that we try to do all that we can to make sure that this is a great place to live. So thank you very much for that. I do appreciate it.
I appreciate that clarification. I must admit that I was one who was taken aback when you suggested that something that distinguished you from the rest was that you had no money interest, meaning we do have money interest. So to hear you say that clearly tonight, that is not the case, I'm glad to hear that. And I would just implore you to be a little bit more careful with those statements.
Thank you, Commissioner Fiocco. Anyone else? Okay.
I don't have anything to say. Let's move on.
Okay. Okay, let's go forward with our commissioner manager update. We'll start, I guess, with the mayor update. Ms. Ruseck, do you want to go on and start?
Well, I just have a couple
Okay.
quick comments, and then I'll let you take it over. As you guys are aware, we have the street fair coming up on October 26th. We're just something of note for that is, as you're obviously aware, we've had continued activity around the statue downtown. We're keeping an eye on that. At this point in time, we are expecting to move forward with the street fair. However, if we do receive some indication that it will be unsafe for fair participants, for citizens, and for staff, and if staff has trouble covering both the street fair and any demonstrations that might be taking place, we do need to consider some alternatives for that street fair on either that date or for another date. So it's just something I think to be mindful of. And again, at this point in time, we are planning on moving ahead with it. That's our official statement on it at the moment. CDM Smith enhanced treatment. We talked a little bit earlier tonight about the pilot treatment program that will begin looking at ways to to pre-treat the raw water that comes in from our Haw River intake for the unregulated chemicals. If you do, I guess there still is some work to be done on the agenda for that, but assuming you do approve that contract, that services agreement, then we would begin work on that immediately. And we look forward to reporting back on that and providing more detail. On October 28th, it's our intention to give you an overview of the utilities master plan, another update, I guess, on the utilities master plan. Talk a little bit about the dashboard in particular, and sort of get your feedback on that and how we want to move forward on looking at utility alternatives with the collaboration of Chatham County as well as possibly Siler or Goldston. And again, some good work on that has happened, and we look forward to seeing what you think about that. And then finally, my last comment I'll make tonight is I'll be in Michigan from October 22nd to October 28th. I'll be back. I'll be actually flying in that Monday, but I expect to be back at the meeting. As always, please feel free to get a hold of me if you have any questions or anything to that effect. And I'll do my best to coordinate a response or answer your question. So with that, I would tap out and open it up for any comments or concerns that you guys might have.
Thank you, Mr. Grisback. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Grisback? Anyone have any updates before?
I have went to the Parks and Rec October 9th. No, I'm sorry, wrong. Yes, it was October 9th. Jeff Christensen gave a update on the Lewis Freeman with some designs. They had about 7 different designs they're looking at to going forward with that park. Other than they had a sewer riser that got repainted over a week ago, Saturday. Before I don't know if I understand they may be going to get a police report. I don't know. So pretty much that was a short and sweet meeting.
I attended a Chatham County Arts Council meeting, and we'll be kicking off the programs in the schools on October 28th, starting with Bennett Elementary and Terry Harrison. And we have a wonderful performer who's actually from Pittsburgh, and he works with the North Carolina Arts Council, and Mike Wiley. Get a chance to see him. He's wonderful. So looking forward to hoping to eventually get programs in all the schools in Chatham County. Constantly looking for sponsors.
I can say a couple things about the EEC. Last meeting there was a presentation by a planning consultant who's been contracted by the county to do their UDO. So they had a comprehensive plan adopted in 2017 and that designated some areas for commercial growth, residential growth, and those types of land use issues, and now they're going to go through the process of codifying, putting into place the code that will enable those types of developments. And they have a hard and fast 44-month process, 3 years, 8 months. Yeah. So that is, I think, started probably October 1 or thereabouts. So that'll get going, and there'll be opportunities for input and stakeholder meetings. So we'll have to keep our ears open for that. Main Street, we are working to establish a visitor center downtown. The old Capital Bank building, which has been vacant for a while, we're trying to get the Chamber of Commerce to join us in that office, and we're looking for a third tenant. So we're going to talk to us about that, please do. And part of the agreement with the owner is that they will enter into a facade grant so that they will make that building look better than it does, more historic.
Keeping with the rest
Yes,
of the day.
exactly. So I'm excited about that opportunity. And honestly, as the traffic circle option project comes through with pavers in the northwest corner, I have a vision of taking those pavers through up to Blue Dot over Jason Blackers. And so that would really, I think, dress up the whole area. So we're working hard on making that happen.
Thank you.
Nothing to report.
Well, I have only a few things that I would like to talk about. The Triangle J Council of Governments held the regional summit, which was great, on Thursday in the Chatham County Agriculture Building. If you all did not go, you missed a treat. It was very, very well attended. We had great discussion. It was very, very good. So, and next time, I would encourage everyone who can to please come. I don't think it will be hosted again in Chatham County next year, but we haven't decided where it would be. But it was certainly a very, very good event, and I certainly wish more people could have attended, but it was very, very well attended. There were elected officials and sponsors from different parts of the Triangle, and we all met here in Pittsburgh. It was great. The next thing was that...
Pro Tempore
Yes.
Baldwin, I would like to thank you personally for the remarkable welcome that you gave at that conference, and tell you that I was proud of the positive contrast that you delivered against what I call the anti-welcoming committee that was out front. And I thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much. I was honored to welcome everyone to Pittsburgh. I think everyone felt welcome. It was just such a good, it was very, very good.
It's a very good event.
It was a great interview there, a lot of great ideas and people coming together. It was very uplifting to be a part of.
Very good. Very good. And the next thing I would like to thank everyone for was the attendance at the Chatham County Fair. It was from September 26th through September 29th, 2019. It was the best attended fair that we have seen in years.
Fantastic.
In years. It was so very, very good. We had a lot of people, a lot of sponsors, but everyone, I would like to, again, thank everyone for attending because it was just great. And I was actually acting as if I was a police officer, chief, so don't get on me. I was directing traffic. So I was parking cars and directing traffic out there. So, but I didn't have on the little badge. So I was out of my element. But it was really good, and I really do, again, appreciate everyone who actually came, everyone who put things on exhibit, if they participated in any way. We even had a little Miss Chatham County pageant. I did that part too, and it was great. So next year, we hope to see more of you. Thank you again. So if there's no other things to report or updates, we'll move on with our agenda to our site plan review. Ms. Bayless.
All right, we have site plan 2019-03. Tioga Honingman has submitted site plans for review, and the site is located on parcel 82336 at the corner of Commerce Court and Industrial Park Drive. It is zoned into heavy industrial. The proposal is to construct a 3,720 square foot auto repair shop. This use requires 9 parking spaces. 18 will be provided, 12 paved in the front and the side of the building, with 6 gravel spaces in the rear. The proposed percent impervious surface for this site is 69.7%. The Planning Board reviewed this site plan on October 7, 2019. They found the plans to be satisfactory and recommended approval in a vote of 6-0. The plans for this site have been reviewed in accordance with the town's applicable development ordinances by the appropriate departments, and staff is recommending approval. The applicant is also here if you have any questions for him.
Thank you, Ms. Bayless. Questions from the board? If there are no questions, then
I'll say that I don't have questions because they were answered by Elizabeth Goodson, and I appreciate that, Elizabeth. And one of the features of this development is that its stormwater management is a regional type device, which means It's already in place on another parcel, so the stormwater's got to get there somehow. And I was asking questions about how that's being managed. And Elizabeth's all over it, so I'm satisfied. Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? There are none. Thanks very much. We'll move forward to old business, which we did change and place, Commissioner Fielko, the water treatment plant, pilot testing agreement.
So in the agreement, so and the consultant is going to get equipment, deliver it to the site, have it on the site for the testing. But it says that the owner shall install the pilot equipment at the treatment plant. So my question is that in and above, that a cost in and above what this contract has? Because this is, I think, $261,000. I just want everybody to know exactly how seriously this board is taking this issue and trying to find resolution to our water issue. And it is true that things could be done upstream that could make our lives easier, healthier, and less expensive. But I suspect this might be an additional cost to that $261,000, and I'd like to know if it is, to let everybody know it's not a surprise when that money comes around, and in fact it is an additional investment, because there's been a lot of talk about whether or not this town and this board is taking it seriously, and we have pursued this issue very diligently for at least a year, and are coming to this culmination of a testing program that will help us decide and understand what our options are. So I know it's at least $261,000. I suspect it might be more.
Do you want me to respond?
Well, that'd be great.
I spoke with Mr. Pickett at the water treatment plant today just to double check, and he indicated to me that the installation of the equipment could probably be done at this point in time. He's saying it could be done within our existing operations budget with current in-house staff. So if that were to change, then we can certainly circle back and let the board know. But we're looking at a couple days' work maximum.
Okay. I do not have an understanding of what that might entail, but seeing something that the owner has to do in order to make this work.
Good question. Yep.
Okay.
Elizabeth, did you have any other?
No, I think that's, we expect it to do what the staff can do, but obviously if there's more, we will come back.
Then I make a motion to approve.
Michael,
Yeah.
you answered, went over a little bit. My question was $261,000 for a test. That is extremely high on my. First, where are we getting that money from? Is that a capital budget?
Well, that's what I might have to have Elizabeth jump in on this a little bit. We have a separate line item for testing, which is up to we have a $90,000 allowance for testing.
But it's coming out of capital.
Yeah, right.
Or you have two different parts coming out.
Two different parts. There's really kind of the equipment, which is the $200,000 and some thousand dollars, or $60,000, and then there's an allowance of up to $90,000 for testing. And Adam doesn't think that we'll use all of the $90,000, but we want to reserve that just in case. As far as the source of the money, it comes out of we have a budget adjustment on it. I believe it's coming out of enterprise reserve. So it's money that we do have.
So it's a possibility it could be 90,000 plus 261.
No,
It'll be
261 includes the 90,000.
so maximum of 260. It could very well be less than that.
Hopefully, right.
Yes,
One other question, I guess this might be for Elizabeth. When they do this test, what is the chances of finding other contaminants other than PFAS, 4.1 dioxide? Is there a possibility of finding other contaminants What are we gonna do then? You know, we're gonna pilot test some other contaminants.
I think at this point, there are always new, that's why they're calling them emerging contaminants. There are always new ones that are being found, these things that are being found in our water, and then whether or not there's an impact of what of us as we drink that water is what's unknown. So this process is targeted to look for the couple of chemicals that we know that we've got concerns with, but obviously there's testing that will test beyond that. If we find something else, then we will be able to see how it's being treated with these different options. It may be that it is addressed in some of these as well, but all of this is being done on the unregulated chemicals, so anything we do is above at least a regulation standpoint where we are evaluating that, but we will be at least informed if any of these become regulated measures that we need to be watching for as well. But I think there is a chance we could see other things or other things in this process while we're pursuing testing and implementation of any future option of that we choose, that there could be other things that come to light.
I just really was surprised at that kind of price for a testing model myself. I'm sorry, I was way out of line with that.
No, I was surprised at that also. I didn't anticipate the testing would be quite that.
Well, again, we do have the money budgeted for the pilot testing programs. What we do have to evaluate moving forward is the operations of the operationalization of that testing. So that may be something that in subsequent budgets we have to come back and evaluate with you on whether or not we want to continue down those particular paths.
Okay.
But we do, as of right now, we do have the money budget.
Okay.
Ms. Goodson, is that test equipment, I'm assuming that we're talking about the number of filters and columns and equipment that contains disposable filter media, in addition to a small reverse osmosis system. Will we own that equipment?
I think it's more of a renting of it during the period of time that we need, in a 6-7 month period of time, and then it would be the consultant to have back at the end of that time period.
In 6 or 7 months, we do know that the contaminants, at least over a 2-year period of monitoring, they change over seasons. Concentrations are higher in summertime, lower in winter. And do we have a rough idea as to when that will be scheduled?
I think we can begin the process of implementing this as soon as it's approved by this board. The scheduling of it, if there is a specific time, I do know we've been seeing some of these peaks that have happened at certain times of the year. The goal of this is really to evaluate when we have contaminants that come in, how much are removed through this process. Now, there is fluctuations in how much goes in that we do need to take into account, but we could do some further testing if we needed to. That there's probably some options of how to do that. CDM Smith probably be the best ones to help guide us on how to do that. They felt that the 6 to 7 month window is a good window to get a representative sample to know how the operation costs would be. They've done it in a couple of other places so far. They expect that we probably will know pretty well after about 3 or 4 months, probably a leading contender on which of these options is serving us well, and if there's any concerns with the others, addressing what we wanted to. So I think the 6 to 7 months is probably adequate, but if we find that we are missing that window entirely, then we can talk about that further, or I'll talk to them when we're sitting down and scoping out the specifics of things going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions from Ms. Goodson, Mr. Bruce?
Motion to approve the water treatment plant pilot testing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We'll move to Commissioner.
Yes, I had another question on the DOT improvement around the circle. I may overlook it, but I see the water main is coming up from the Sanford Road, going on the south side of the circle. Is that going down to Small Street or Masonic Street?
Close to Masonic, it's just short of Masonic.
Okay. And with that price of $95,000, did we by any chance get a price from Hydrostructure that has already done some work on our water main, our transmission line?
So this is not a cost that we have done. This is a cost associated with DOT projects. So this is a project they are doing, and we have requested that they upsize the line
Right.
rather than replacing it with the same line that's there. So a 2-inch line is what's existing. They need to affect that area.
Oh, I'm aware that we're moving large in the line.
But it's their project. They're doing the cost. They use unit cost. And they gave us a cost estimate for what it takes to replace the 2-inch and a cost to upsize to 12, and we are paying the difference of the two is what.
Okay.
So it's the increased cost. So that's the part that we would be responsible for paying, but we are not the ones going in and paying the contractor to do the design or consulting with that specific contractor to do that work.
Okay. And regarding the handrails, where are these handrails going? I wasn't able to see that on the print either.
Did you know more about that?
Yeah, it's right.
Yeah,
in front of Pam and Snuffy's, where the existing handicap ramp is and those stairs.
Mhm.
All of that's getting reworked, and so we're going to need new handrails for the handicap access and safety rails for where the sidewalk will be about 2.5 feet above the ramp on one side. So those are all going to be handrails, and we're trying to make them decorative. So this money is just the additional cost to make them decorative. There's cost in the project for handrails in general. We're just trying to make them look nicer than what DOT would typically put up.
Okay. We are spending taxpayers' money.
Yes. And hopefully making very good use of it.
Anything additional? Questions, concerns about that?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move forward now to our zoning text amendment. Ms. Baylor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This is zoning text amendment 2019-04. Dan Morse is requesting an amendment to Article 5 of the Pittsburgh zoning ordinance, specifically Section 5.3.3.38, subsection C and D. The special use permit requirements for planned developments are contained in this section, and the proposed amendments to this section would change density regulations for PUDs in the R15 zoning district and the configuration of the recreation space within PUDs in any zoning district. Subsection C states that the maximum number of dwelling units per gross acre shall be no greater than that permitted in the underlying zoning district in which the proposed PUD is located, except that in the R12 and R10 zoning districts, the maximum number of dwelling units in a PUD shall not exceed 12 units per gross acre. The request is to add the highlighted text, which reads, in the R15 zoning district, the maximum number of dwelling units in a PUD shall not exceed 8 units per gross acre. The other requested amendment is in subsection D, which states that play areas shall be provided for all residential building groups with over 5 units and shall contain a minimum of 56 square feet per unit, with each play area not to exceed 4,000 square feet. The applicant is requesting that the highlighted text be removed from the ordinance so that the final text would read, play areas shall be provided for all residential building groups with over 5 units and shall contain a minimum of 56 square feet per unit. Staff is recommending approval of the requested change to subsection C. However, staff is recommending the following alteration to the language in subsection D. Play areas shall be provided for all residential building groups with over 5 units. The play areas shall contain a minimum of 56 square feet per unit, and each unit must be located within 1,320 feet, which is a 5-minute walk, of the play area by way of sidewalk or multi-use path. If the play area cannot meet the geographical requirement, Then multiple play areas must be provided so as to provide recreation space within a 5-minute walk from every residence. Regardless of the number of play areas, each must be in a centralized location within the development. A public hearing was held on September 23, 2019. There were no citizens who chose to speak. The Planning Board reviewed this request at their meeting on October 7, 2019. The Board found the amendment to be consistent with our future land use plan and recommended to approve the text amendment as recommended by staff in a vote of 6-0.
Questions for Ms. Bailey?
I just have a comment. I think it's wonderful to add the language, and especially about that the recreation space should be within a 5-minute walk. This seems minor, but it could have implications, and that is the use of the word centralized location. There may be times when there's a nice stand of trees or something that's on the edges of the residences. But to me, as long as it's within the 5-minute walking distance, it wouldn't matter if it's central or if it's on the edge. And to me, that the use of the word centralized kind of implies it needs to be in the middle. And I think there might be times when you're maybe along a creek or some other. I don't know. I'm just saying that might take out that part as long as you're including the 5-minute walk. That's probably enough.
We could, if the board, whatever the board wishes, that language was actually suggested by Paul Horn, our parks planner. I think his thoughts were, you don't know what's going to be beside on that property line. Mm-hmm. So you could be having the kids playing right next to something commercial. You don't really know necessarily, and the centralized location is going to be easier to get that 5-minute walk also. But whatever the board.
Yeah, I think it's part of that, but I'm just thinking if it's along an existing buffer.
Well, I had a very similar concern because I thought that proximity distance was dealing with the centralized. Yeah. And I did think that children were of concern as well, not to have them on the edge of a project, internal. And so that also brought me to this other question is there's other language in section D that is not included here. And I just heard you say, Victoria, that you're just adding language. So you wouldn't be deleting any language. And the language I'm looking at says that these areas must be clearly delineated on the site plan, shall not be used for paths nor any other purposes other than recreation. The reasonableness that such sites could be used by young children free from danger, apparent danger, must be clearly evident for approval. I think that's probably trying to deal with that same centralized idea.
Okay.
I know.
You tell me.
So what does the board think? That you need to remove that word centralized, or that should cover?
I would say we remove that last sentence.
Yes,
regardless.
That's me. I didn't say that was the point.
And just to confirm, the language I just read is remaining in. Because I don't see us describing where we're deleting.
Correct.
Okay. The other question I have is, it does say that this area won't be used as a path, right? But does it make sense to have a minimum dimension for a play area? Like it can't be 2 feet wide by 1,000 feet long. We're trying to make a play area. It wants to be able to play area. And I wonder, does it make sense?
But like what you're saying, part of the that it's for the children, it's basically designed for them to be able to play free. Yeah, exactly. 2 foot by 1,000 foot. You wouldn't pass it. So I don't think that would pass the approval process. And these are special use permits.
Got it.
So you've got control over that design.
Okay. regardless of the number of play areas. Each must be in a centralized location within the development.
Can we do the consistency statement?
Motion that we find this to be consistent with our comprehensive plan.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Another motion?
I make the motion to approve the amendments, proposed ordinance amendments deleting the last reading, regardless of the number of play areas. Each must be in a centralized location within the development.
Second. Been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Goodson, sewer allocation guidelines.
You have in your packet a updated copy of the sewer allocation guidelines that I've been working on over the last several months. And this is slightly different than the one that I had shared with you a few weeks ago, but primarily the only change that is of substance is how we handle existing buildings and those that have an existing service and have previously been on the town sewer. After discussing this and talking about it internally, properties that already are existing structures and that you might be having a new tenant go in, there is a process that I need to help keep up with the sewer flow that might change from an office building to a beauty shop or something like that that has a different flow. But the nature of if the business is within the zoning that's appropriate for that property, going through a full allocation process does not seem that it's quite as prudent. But any new connection to the town sewer, any new extension is still as we've been talking about. So that's the main change that is in this set of guidelines. That is different than what we have talked about in the past, so I wanted to make sure I brought that specific piece to your attention. Other than that, this is trying to walk through some of the questions that we hit as hurdles along the way with requests and give some structure to how we process requests so that we can share that with applicants and that we can also have kind of a guideline for how we operate for those needs, since we are dealing with very specific amounts of sewer available and probably will be for a period of time. So if there's any questions that you have after reviewing the information that's in your packet or the previous version, either one we can kind of talk about if there's a question that you had after reading the last version too.
Questions from the board?
I have one simple one. Number C, the 2T rules, is that considered the 120-gallon bedroom?
So within the 2T rules, as you read the language, there is a statement that references that if you have approval by the state to follow the process associated with that, you can have a reduction in flow. So the 2T rules in and of themselves allow for that. So I have not specified an alternate in this case. The 2T rules themselves spell out the process for that, so referencing the 2T rules covers.
So you could possibly 90 gallons a bedroom, is that?
The situation that Chatham Park has done, they have submitted a request to the state and been approved for 120 gallons per day for up to 2 bedrooms, and then 60 gallons per day for each additional bedroom. That is different than we do throughout the rest of town. That process they went through is outlined in the 2T rules. So they went through a process that's within those rules, so they are therefore allowed to do it per the 2T rules. So it's one of those, we could put in here 2T rules or otherwise approved by the state, but it would have been redundant to say it. So I did not add the language in there, but yes, this does cover what Chatham Park has been able to accomplish and what we anticipate some other projects also doing. They will not be the only ones probably requesting that. And if we get to a point from a town-wide side that we can meet that requirements, we will proceed with it as well, but until that time.
Flow and infiltration.
There we go.
Pause that, or solve that.
All right, I have one other question. I'm passing on. In F down there, where it says that the project approval expires, do we have another fee or anything on that? Do we charge another fee? Or is it just another application?
If the project expires, they would have to go through the approval process like it's new.
And so there would be another fee on that?
Another review fee, whatever that is at the time, and we would go through the process.
Do we need to add that in here, or is that pretty much standard if they start over?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'll tap out.
Jeff, when are the fees being paid?
The fees are being paid at site plan review or subdivision review time.
Are you talking review fees, or are you talking?
Yeah, we do.
No, it's for system fees.
Okay.
There is a policy that's probably going to outline that a little clearer that's coming soon, but it is anticipated because of the general statutes that it will be likely a flat time, but we're working through that question. We've had a couple of situations that the plat already had been part of a loan that has been done at zoning compliance, so we're watching to be sure that we're collecting it on anything that's happened since October of last year when the system development fees went into effect to make sure we catch any remaining ones.
Flat being residential development.
Yes.
So for a commercial site plan, we base it on a meter size, right? Or no, we base the commercial on the flow.
Commercial's based off of flow.
Residential on the meter size.
Right.
So the assumption is all residential meters are a certain size?
Yes.
So final plat?
Yep.
Preliminary plat?
Final.
Okay.
Be tough.
I do have some questions. So, in general, I think what we're saying is if you can get your site plan or your subdivision approved, you can claim an allocation then.
Yes.
So, it is possible that a project could submit, let's say, January 1, and it take 8 months to get approval. Another project submits in June, and it takes 1 month to get approval, and they jump ahead. Okay. So our metric is approval, not when you submit your application.
Yes.
Application submittal, well, it brings up a question. So can a project, when it submits for site plan or subdivision approval, not include the request for sewer allocation?
We require the request to come in. Part of the initial questions that I'm asking, if it's not
Right.
with the submittal, it's a first review comment. So it's coming in with the first submittal, and to this point, I have been adding it to the list at that point. But in essence, when it comes to the board for approval, is when that allocation is coming. We have not wanted to bring allocations ahead of a project just because they were submitted, because the project may never move forward, the project may take more time, they may not need it for a period of time. So when they're coming before you is when we have been bringing them. I've been trying to keep that list so that you're aware of who else is in the queue and has submitted a request, so that it's an informed evaluation at that point.
But you can't let the allocation get too far behind the project either. So you can't get it ahead, but you can't get it behind either. But you can't approve something without some capacity because...
My expectation is it would be approved
Right.
simultaneously. We're not simultaneously, but concurrently. And so I would offer this modification to this language. Item 3A says for all new projects, sewer allocation request will be accepted with the submittal of an application. Can we change that word accepted to required?
We can do that.
Because it led me to think that there was some flexibility, which then also led me to think, I think somewhere in the document it talks about a maximum approval time of validity of a year,
Mhm.
or if the town allows something else. But then the next item says it will basically run with the plan approval. I think let's just get rid of the 1 year and say it runs with the plan approval. Is there anything else that wouldn't catch? I mean, a zoning compliance certificate, does that ever expire?
Probably. After 12 months.
Probably. So it already has a time frame built in. And a project that is getting close.
Law says it does. New law says it does.
That's what makes it fit.
But that's not effective yet.
Well, the building, minimum housing code laws are. We can chat later.
So zoning compliance may not have it today, but it,
So maybe we
the
need to
other
have a
two.
text amendment to our ordinance that says the zoning compliance certificate is valid for next.
Yeah, there's some conflicting language even in the new law that one says 2 years, one says 12 months.
For zoning compliance?
For any approved.
The only reason why I even entertained the language that's in here is we have had one situation where a project had sewer allocation, their expiration of their plan approval had come up. We brought that back before you, and there was an approval to approve the extension, but not approve the sewer allocation. It's a little bit of a tricky situation when the plan's approved to move forward, but the sewer allocation's not. But we have done it where there's been one and not the other.
So that would provide that flexibility, which is an odd flexibility to exercise. If I'm a developer, I want my project to still be valid, but really have no ability to build it.
It's okay if we want to simplify that.
I think simplify it. So a couple of things. We are talking about an active project. 1E. What is an active project?
One that is approved and actively under either further review, construction drawings, or whatever review from a staff level, ability for constructing.
And all of that would have to occur prior to expiration of the site plan.
No, as long as you're active, your project stays active.
So if I'm working on construction drawings, and I don't get a building permit, or I don't get any kind of land disturbing permit before expiration,
That's been our
that's active. Okay.
More than likely, they're trying to address things that staff and to no fault of their own, most likely. They can't get building permit because we're holding them up.
Can't get some compliance. Right.
So we listed kind of the criteria that if you're meeting with us, you're submitting plans, you're actively constructing, you are an active project. You have not stopped communication, development, construction for a 12-month period. If you just go away or activity stops for 12 months, then that would then become an inactive project. It gives a lot of grace to a development to continue to build. It alleviates projects expiring and having to come back through a process that they've already been through. As long as they got approval originally, they should stay active as long as they're wanting to stay active.
Okay.
But maybe there is language that we can adjust those approval times, either up or down, whatever that may be. I know we've talked in the past about going beyond 12 months for approval, either in the UPO or somewhere else.
No, it's done many other places.
Right.
there's a item 2A. You're talking about your existing structures, and I completely get that. But what is a development project? It says if an existing structure or development project has a sewer service connection.
A multi-tenant building is what I was thinking of. Anything that was an approved plan that you've got to change its use really happening. Honestly, an existing structure may be enough.
Yeah.
Existing structure may be enough. We could simplify that.
Okay. And then, what is a sewer service? I mean, well, here it says sewer service connection, so I think that's easily known. But there's another location where it simply says sewer service. And like, is that just a line stubbed to a lot? And is that an existing sewer service? So now I qualify under an existing project? Or am I a new development? Because I think the definition of, where you say, answer these 3 questions, oh yeah, new sewer service is needed. So if I've got a sewer line stubbed to the property, but there's no building, and I have to run that sewer line to that building, is that a new sewer service?
That is a new sewer service.
Okay.
So
it has to be actually connected.
The plumbing portion, the part from the private, or from the public line that's private to the building is the service typically.
Okay.
And that's what I am intending by that language, but yes.
I think using the word connection
may
is
help.
helpful. I think it is.
So 2D, part I there, add connection to that one. Is that where you were seeing that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I ran into the same submittal confusion with item 4A. It used the word timely, untimely submittal, which made me think, if I'm required to do it with my application, that was timely to get, but that wasn't really necessarily defined yet, so I thought maybe there was the ability to float and not have the 2 things aligned, which would be problematic, because if a site plan expired, yet I didn't ask for a sewer allocation for 6 months afterwards, I get 6 months of sewer allocation with no project. We don't want that.
Since we've clarified that it's a required submittal requirement, we could take out the word timely and it's upon submittal.
Okay.
We're going to just bring up one thing. When we have commercial buildings, especially multi-tenant buildings, they may not always know exactly the tenants in that building. And so we may not know, even at approval time, what that allocation is going to be. So we've asked engineers to guesstimate, and they do pretty well.
Yeah.
But it could be a case where we've given more, so some of that might come back, or that they would have to come back and ask for more at a later time.
It's not clear that they would tend to ask for more than what they think they're going to need.
It's pretty expensive.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And having experience with just that calculation is associated with the parking as well.
Yeah. So there are nuances into that request, and that request coming in at application time. They may just not know the gallon, down to the last gallon, what that piece might be. So just take, if you see like a round number sometimes, 5,000, 3,500, that may be the best guess of that development at the time. And that they're either going to modify that through staff or come back for additional to forward.
So they should have their first guess. First
Yeah. That's exactly what we'd be looking for.
Okay. And one other question, Elizabeth, and I know you're going to enjoy this one. Can a project request a zero flow sewer allocation?
I'm sure that they can request it.
Okay.
I don't know that that does a whole lot for them to have a sewer allocation for zero.
Well, it allows them to build a sewer line.
So a sewer permit for zero flow.
Yes.
So that to me is a little different. Sewer allocation is what we're doing
Got it.
on the
Got it.
planning side versus sewer permit is what we're submitting to the state for construction. And yes, you can submit a sewer permit for zero flow, but it comes with a whole lot of questions from the state and a follow-up modification that has to happen afterwards. I've actually had a conversation with the folks at the state to ask them with one that we needed to do. It was an appropriate one to do, but when we submitted it, there were questions about why is this not got flow associated with it. And so we worked through those questions, and we can do that when needed. What I would say is that things that are major trunk lines, like a large commercial development that has a large trunk line, that is a fairly logical time to do a zero flow request and then have the flow come when the adjacent ties occur. For residential, it's hard to do zero flow for residential because you're going to need the flow too soon behind when you're constructing it. So there are some appropriate times to work with that. And we've had a couple of situations we've needed to look at that. But more outfall level lines are appropriate. The service, to use the word service, the more network of lines within a project generally have flow on them and need to have that associated with when they're going through. So yes, it can happen.
That's all I have.
Anything additional?
I have one more question. And it may not even pertain to this, but if a person has a lot and a sewer easement and water is going by there, but it's not hooked up to the sewer, do they go through this exact same procedure as a developer in a project?
Yes.
Okay.
So if it is the sewer
Single
line,
home.
sewer line is on their property, or the sewer line's in the road in front of their property. So they have immediate access to it, but they don't have the service connection from that main line to their building. Then yes, they would go through the same process. But if they're a single-family home, their flow is fairly low, so that would be something that would be a relatively easy thing to accommodate. If it is a subdivision and is divided into multiple ones, then obviously we're dealing with the thing that we
Right.
deal with.
Okay.
But a single home needing that request, yes, they would go through the same process.
Okay.
And it is a little bit cumbersome for that single-family home builder who needs to go through this, because at this point we do have it. If you're going through a sewer allocation request, it is an engineered document. I just have to have a letter. We may end up having a form that we work through that's a better document for that. But right now it's an engineer signed and sealed letter. And that is a time I get questioned, is that really necessary? And for a single home, I guess it's up to the board if you view that as something that I can address, or if it's something we follow the same process for everybody, which has been my process so far. Changing the ones that are existing services or existing structures to not require this, I think will address most of our times when you've got a small business owner who does not have an engineer on board to help them with the work they're doing, and it would be a burden. But the single-family home is the other scenario that comes up.
I would just hate to see a single family having to pay for an engineer or, to stamp that just for their sewer.
Elizabeth, for a residential subdivision comes in today, it's got 10 lots, it's going to request allocation.
They are.
And they're going to say, this is how many bedrooms each house has, blah, 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 and it'll be assigned to a lot, so that when that person comes to build, they don't.
They would not be required to do it. But if it's an
But they would-
existing lot, that would be a different
Right,
situation.
but they would have to probably provide you with the verification document, is that right?
If it's an approved subdivision, I probably would not need that.
Because you've already got it
Because
in the books.
I've got it already
Okay.
accounted for.
Right.
That really is I don't have any record of it in our listing, and I need to capture that I've got something that may have not been captured in the last year.
Should make Chatham Mills very exciting.
There's a couple around that probably will benefit from that thought process, but I think there's also a lot of small business owners that it will help it not be as big of a burden for them. Is there something on the single family home on an existing lot with a sewer service connection that's needed, that we want to allow that to be something that is not requiring of an engineer full allocation request, or something that we do more of at staff level, administrative level? Or is it something you would like to
Personally, I'd
see?
like to see that in-house, because
Yes,
that's
I agree.
a expense on the homeowner, especially trying to get started or whatever their plan.
I
Especially
agree.
one single family on one single lot.
Zoning compliance certificate
And
could say how many bedrooms is this house, and then you know what the number is.
Yes. I think we can do a form of some description that addresses that, and they confirm the number of bedrooms, and we can.
Yeah, if they certify on their application this is what it is, then we can do the math.
And then the certification is going to go to the county, and they're going to come in and match.
That's reasonable.
I think that would certainly be a great adjustment in
Yes.
reference to doing it. We don't want to make something burdensome for our citizens. Certainly, we don't want them to have to do that.
And would this also benefit, I'm forgetting the phrase in our planning ordinance, but the mother-in-law cottage or the detached house in the backyard? Thank you, accessory dwelling unit.
We could certainly, you could say, and accessory dwelling units can also qualify as the administrative approval process.
I think in general, that's something I'd like us to consider, because Commissioner Farrell, I appreciate you bringing this up. I think we would like to see more infill development, and so
Most likely those ADUs are going to be 1 or 2 bedroom, right, at most.
Yeah.
So they're looking at 120 gallons, to 240 gallons at most. So those are going to be really small numbers. If we started seeing a big run on those and we didn't have an idea on sewer, then we could definitely monitor that a little bit closer. But I think that is a good policy change for that flexibility for single family ADUs.
Well, and an ADU isn't always a separate structure.
No, it could be in a garage
Exactly,
or something
which
attached.
is attached to 3, 4 bedrooms, so it really only adds 1 bedroom, but not 2 minimum.
And if it's in an existing structure, you're not adding a new utility service, the sewer service connection there at that time. I will point out, this is single-family homes on existing lots.
Right.
So it is not a non-residential structure that may only need a service. That I'm going to still require them to go through the process and get an engineer to sign and seal that document for a new structure that's tied to our system. So this is only single-family. But I do think that's
So your clarification would reflect, like on a hypothetical of Postal Seafood, that an existing non-residential, an existing commercial building, or a building being upfitted for commercial use would still need to go through engineering and calculations. Is that what you're saying?
So I'm not familiar with what all went on with Postal Seafood, but if it's an existing structure that was not a commercial structure and we're changing use, there's probably a site plan process that we're going to have to go through with other things to address that. If it's an existing structure that the zoning's in place, everything else is in place, and we are changing from one type of business to another type of business, then that's the one that would be more just a verification. Updating the flow information that I have for our records so that we're monitoring the sewer flow in the plant appropriately. Did that answer the question?
It did. Jeff, you're having experienced that. Would you amend or enhance Elizabeth's answer?
I think internally we talked about uses or structures that in town that may have lapsed or not been occupied for a 12-month period, and that sewer not being in our data at the plant, and then sort of starting anew. But if it were to be a change of use from one commercial to another commercial within that monitoring period, then it really is just sort of comparing.
It's really acknowledged in other numbers that we keep up with. if it's something that's happened within a calendar year. If it's longer than that, that's part of why I want to make sure I get that documentation so I can know I've got these projects that were not in the last calendar year active, and this is flow that is going to be active again, that is not in the spreadsheet today.
Any additional questions, concerns?
I would say you're touching on something, mentioning postal is important because that's an adaptive reuse project of what would have qualified, I guess, as a vacant building. The last thing we want to do is make it very difficult to penalize people for trying to do that in the downtown Main Street area. So I think we need to also be very considerate of that. Because we could write a bunch of rules and really discourage people and leave some downtown buildings vacant, and that's not good for anybody.
Torn down. That's part of why we modified this language to try and have more of an ability for us to have an accounting of what we need to be keeping an accounting of, but not be burdensome on somebody to have to come and go through an allocation process when the building itself had sewer sewer active, not in this calendar year, but maybe longer ago, but it's already gone through those processes. So yes, trying to accommodate exactly that situation that Phil.
I know there was a lot mentioned tonight.
I think I have captured, and I can walk through the edits I've got, and if everybody's in agreement, we can either, if they're okay with adopting it with these edits, we can, or if you want me to update it and we can put it on the consent agenda or something like that at the next meeting, we can do either.
That'd be fantastic. I know this is a lot of complex stuff.
That's fine. I don't mind doing that. I'll run through it real quick just so I'm sure I captured. I've got under 1F that we're going to remove the fact that we're not going to grant sewer allocation separate from plan approval. Or we're not going to grant plan approval extensions without sewer allocation going with them. So the last sentence is what I'm going to remove. And then under 2DI, we're going to add connection to sewer service. Allocation that it's a sewer service connection. And if I find that anywhere else, I'll add it too, but I think that's the main one. And then under 3A, we are going to say sewer allocation requests will be required with submittals of these particular plan types. And then 4A, upon submittal, not timely submittal. And then I will find where the right place is to plug in, but it's probably going to be under existing. We'll find where the right spot is. The single-family house on an existing lot or accessory dwelling will go through a staff, an administrative approval process. But I'll look for language that does that and plug that in. But I will modify that. We may not have another discussion unless you feel like you need to when you see the final edits. We'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting with the final tweaks and go from there. Any other thing that you had that I didn't capture?
That's it.
Okay. If anybody has any thoughts after tonight, and you can get them to us quick, then
You said the allocation was running with the approval. Right? Yeah.
if that's not captured, I will make sure it is.
Okay. Well, I certainly appreciate the work that you put into this, trying to figure this out.
It's a tricky thing to make sure we cover
Good
all
job.
the
Good job.
important needs.
For all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dixon. Thank you. Mr. Bruce Beck, traffic calming policy.
Thanks. You have before you this evening a slightly revised traffic calming policy. Revised traffic calming policy. This is a continuation of the draft that was originally presented back in almost 5 years ago, 2014. Partly also based on the discussion from back this previous May, where we received some additional board input regarding some elements that you'd like to see as part of the policy. As I recall from that discussion, we had two main areas that the board provided additional input on. One was possibility of including petition to help kind of strengthen the request from the neighborhood, and then second, consideration of other traffic calming best practices. If you go through the memo, the request is really the first step. The citizens can approach the town by filling out a request for a traffic calming measures form with the planning department. And then from that, the planning department would take that information and define a service area, basically an area that's being affected by traffic, and trying to basically get a handle on where the traffic is coming from, and at least giving a sort of a preliminary idea on how traffic is affecting that particular area. The planning department would then coordinate with other departments on basic input on what's happening in that service area and possible solutions. And then following that, they develop a plan, and that plan includes some of those possible additional traffic calming improvements. For instance, I think typically and conventionally we would think of speed tables. But speed tables may not be, and in fact data shows that they don't actually improve safety or speed in a particular neighborhood. They tend to be more punitive for passing traffic if it's done anything. So we may want to consider some other possible traffic calming devices, which would include, but certainly not be limited to, things like pedestrian bump outs, dedicated bicycle lanes, medians, modifications to speed limits, following a speed study, or additional signage. So there's more than, in other words, there's more than one way to help calm traffic or help calm a traffic situation. I think I might consider an item Jeff and I discussed earlier today. Also might be able to consider a practice that's referred to as road diet. Over the years, a road diet has meant different things. But in this day and age, a road diet essentially means, Jeff, you go ahead and throw something at me if I'm off base here, but if we have a street, for instance, that may be too wide, conventionally wide streets tend to stimulate traffic at higher speeds. So a road diet will take a street and shrink it to a smaller width, which in theory is supposed to help decrease traffic. So that's certainly something that Jeff and his team could consider as well. And then I think we get into once we've determined the plan, we kind of get into some other factors, which is again, the petition. Does a possible solution, is it in need of support, and are the neighbors and is the affected area in support of it? Oftentimes it's one person that thinks there are too many cars going by at unsafe speeds. Oftentimes it's a collection of people on the streets. In any case, based on the info received from the board last meeting, petition may be something that we need to factor in with that as well. And then last but not least, cost and budgeting. We have to determine what's the fairest way to go about implementing a traffic calming device. In some cases, if we're using, say, for instance, pedestrian bump outs or putting in medians, it may not be as simple as just a basic sort of budget ordinance. We may want to look at either a special assessment and or budgeting in the next year, in the next fiscal year, for certain improvements. But anyway, at any rate, what I'm trying to avoid, from my perspective, is a situation where residents come in and demand a speed table immediately, and we don't have the money to do it, or we have to take that money from other necessary Powell bill projects. So cost and budgeting and a process for that is also a factor. So, in essence, like I said, what you have here is a basic second or third attempt at a policy. If you don't want to make a decision on it tonight, feel free to review it. We can bring it back to the next meeting. If you have any additional thoughts on it, Jeff might have some additional.
Yeah, I think Liz and I were discussing that leading up to the meeting. I think there could be some refinements to maybe some definitions of what things mean in the policy, and then maybe just some detailed procedures about what to expect and what the public might expect too. So I think we might take a stab at it to look at it. If you all are in favor of a traffic common policy in general, we would take this, the meat of this, and rework it a little bit and bring that out to the consequence. Or some meat, not box.
That's good. My concern, I was looking at this, and one of the issues, number 6, the petition. How many residents would have to sign that petition?
I think those are things that we would want to
Okay.
define. I think the idea could be one, but then we go and we talk to the neighborhood, we talk to the neighbors, and nobody else is in favor of it, thinks that idea might be detrimental to their enjoyment of their street, then it may be a report back to you all or to the town manager that says we investigated this request and it didn't rise to the level of doing anything other because of these certain factors. Well, I think we would have to accept the petition, but the validity and the veracity of that petition, we'd have to sort of flesh that out through the process. I think what we'll find is when we get to this policy, we'll have a handful of problem areas that we know in town, and we will accept their petition in if they so choose. And then we'll go through the process of identifying solutions. And then if a solution is warranted, you all will need to make a decision on what we would do and how we would pay for that.
That was just one of my things I wanted more clarification on.
I think not having one is probably not the answer to the citizens, the residents of town. Having a policy that we can have them get involved with is probably a good thing. And whether that ultimately leads to a solution that they're happy with, we'll have to understand that might not be the case all the time, but at least there's an avenue for them to petition the town and go through a process. Right now, it may feel like that there's a brick wall, there's no response. This will help with those types of situations.
And again, I don't want to overpromise any possible solutions because I don't want anything. As it sits right now, we run the risk of having someone request speed tables on virtually any street. I mean, they can certainly make that request. They may or may not find a sympathetic audience with the board on it. But the two areas that we seem to have the most attention are sort of cut through areas. One being Oakwood, and the other being Chatham Forest Drive. And in those cases, cars may or may not be speeding. I think you need, Chief Crutchfield can attest to this one. I think you may want to be careful about trying to apply a speed study to those situations because the methodology of a speed study can very well determine that a speed limit is maybe set artificially low in some of those situations and that cars may be entitled to safely travel a faster speed than what we currently have posted. In essence, what we have in a couple of those areas would be residents that want to sort of punish cut-through traffic. They want to punish people that are driving through a certain area, and a speed table may be a way of doing that. And I don't think that's a responsible use of public money, especially when we have other streets that we need to be paving. So I think a policy is a great way of trying to come up with a best practice to fix a problem that does, in fact, exist in terms of speed, unsafe pedestrian conditions, and things of that nature. And that's what we're hoping to solve with this.
That sounds good. We look forward to you bringing it back.
Yeah, thank you very much for all of that, and thank you, Mr. Griesbeck, for the draft, and Mr. Jones for your comments. And only additional comment that I might offer is there may be situations where we can remind neighborhoods they can form a neighborhood association if they don't have one already. They can, if they have an HOA, homeowners association, that they can take action and what those actions might be. And in that regard, the one thing that just jumps to my mind, and I haven't studied it at all, is these new signs that include a radar device and an automated speed. And Chief Percy, I don't know if you have any opinion on those, whether or not they're accurate, whether or not they're safe, or what, but I'd like to encourage a conversation among staff about how to incorporate a tiny bit of education to your work, just that if you get that petition in, you can immediately respond by saying, you do have options that you can take on your own, whatever those may be.
Yeah, we'll take a look at what that might be.
Thank you.
I appreciate you clarifying that comment. We were going through the minutes, and I couldn't. They weren't all that. The audio recording wasn't that clear. And I remember you saying education, and we were trying to determine what that means. So I do appreciate you bringing that up.
Okay.
I just have a question too about the petitions. So it sounds like it's something that staff would do. The burden wouldn't be on the neighborhood to go out and get X number of signatures before it would be considered.
I think that's some of the things we want to take a look at.
To me, that would kind of make sense before you even start the process. If you've got one of these larger neighborhoods, to see that they have some formula that they have to have that before this process even starts. And for one thing, we are in the situation of wanting to keep the roads safe, but there are times when the traffic needs to keep moving, so there seems like there could be some roads that would be identified. I hate to do that, but there's some roads you don't want to be.
The road was designed for the speed and the width that it was on purpose, because that was either one what was called for that amount of homes or traffic that would be generated, or that's what our specs called for. So I think we're going to need to look at each request critically and make sure that that service area is looked at and what's that street trying to do. So, yeah.
Would this be limited to town-maintained streets versus NCDOT-maintained streets?
Good question, and probably one that we need to address the policy.
They just don't like those things.
Yeah.
And if you are going to finance it with special assessments, you're going to need a substantial percentage of the people involved to participate and agree.
Good comment.
Thank you all. Next, we have commissioner concerns.
I don't have anything.
Brian, I know you were talking to DOT about the lighting out of the 87 of the community college circle. Just curious, any movement on that?
Yeah, they're working with Duke and trying to design something. Like I said last night.
Yeah, so no update.
They're working on it.
So you haven't got any update in 2 weeks time? Like, hey, they're out there doing X, Y, and Z.
They're not done. They're working on it, but they're not done.
I appreciate the very clear update.
We may be meeting with DOT on Wednesday for our normal catch-up meeting, so we can talk to Brian and chat. And then we have on Thursday where DOT regularly is, so we can chat with those folks on Thursday.
Yeah, it sounds like there's no update.
Yeah.
That's fine.
You know,
That's fine. I mean,
2 weeks.
I just
Feels like that.
Yep.
one thing I was going to say, I just thought I'd mention it. The road that's in front of the apartments in Powell Place, the widening of the road has happened. It's still a little bumpy, but it's really made a huge difference on that road, and so I'm very grateful to the developer for his willingness to do that. It's really helped.
Commissioner Bond?
Yes, I'm really pleased that we've made further progress. We're going to initiate testing of various filtration systems for our water. That's going to be very informative to our plans for changes to the current plan or for a new plan. And I remain concerned about what we can do in the near term. And would just like to again ask that we understand what the options are clearly for near-term measures to, one way or another, decrease the pollutants in our drinking water.
Anything additional? I don't have a concern, but I have given everyone this. Clean water begins with you and me. And it's a very, very good little pamphlet about clean water, storm water, and it's very interesting. And I've distributed a few of these to the board members, and I have a few more if anyone else would be interested in these.
I was going to point out that, a reminder that there is, Oklahoma River Assembly is having a program about how safe it's supposed for drinking water, October 16th through the 18th. It seems like it might be good for commissioners to be there. October 16th through the 18th.
I saw that in the Chatham Records.
If there's anything additional, not anything additional, then we need a motion to go into closed session.
Mayor Pro Tem, may we revisit the minutes, which we had some corrections to, and we didn't include them. So I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the corrections to the September 23rd, 2019 minutes we have here on our desk. Two very minor corrections, but I think one of them is an important one.
Yes, absolutely. We need a second on that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So now we need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
All right.
Yes. Second. I've been break.
Y'all got to leave, just can't stay there.
Yeah.
We're going to just do it right now.
What's that?